Good morning. Welcome to the Motor Life F1, episode 15. Again, with a special guest, we have Linda Kamau. Welcome.
Thank you, Limo.
Better late than never. I've been, ever since I started this podcast, I've been looking for you.
Yeah.
So welcome.
Thank you.
We're here near the end of the 2024 F1 season. We just came from Brazil. How was that for you?
Yeah, well, it was always been a long season. It's like, I pity the drivers and that crew and everyone who has to do the work. But for us to be able to enjoy Formula One, I bet the people are tired and looking forward to the end of the season. But yeah, Brazil was quite an interesting race, starting from, I think, FP1. I think even just before that, the media day on Thursday, and especially going on what happened actually in Mexico and then Brazil. So lots of chatter with the media on media day, I think around Max driving, which was quite interesting. But then I think just watching what happened, we couldn't get the quali going because of the rain. I mean, some of us stayed so late waiting for it, and then it gets cancelled, I think, because of the time zone difference. So it was quite disheartening. But then at the end of it all, I was like, I'm going to have entertainment twice in a day, which is like Sunday. We had the quali before the race, I think almost 4 hours before the race. So quite entertaining because the rain was still pouring, though not as hard as Friday. So yeah, it was. I think even you get confused, especially when I think Hamilton exited Q1, and I remember saying, "Oh no, it's even tomorrow it will rain, so it's fine. We're going to have an entertaining race." And I was like, "But no, it's not tomorrow. It's actually in 4 hours' time. We're going to be racing." So yeah, it was quite an interesting race with the rain. I mean, I think we had how many DNFs? Almost 5 or something DNFs. So. Which means that a lot was at stake in terms of even just driver visibility and safety. So, I think for a time I was like, maybe you all need to actually stop this race because there's too much going on. I mean, too many red flags. I think about 5 red flags or so. But still it delivered. Who was I rooting for? Definitely been hoping that Lando can keep Max on his toes with the championship so that it goes down to even the last race. So you bet because he was starting P1, it was like this, and Max was P17. It was like, this one is your chance to just reduce those 44 points. But then, the race came and done for him, and it was sad. But yeah, I like that there's, I think, it's how the season looks like. You're thinking things are moving, but then all of a sudden things shift. I mean, it's the first race Verstappen has won since June or something.
About 10 races.
Yeah. Exactly, which I think for us, we're all like, that's good because then there's getting good competition, especially because other cars haven't been doing it. But then been loving the Ferrari title race with Red Bull as well, and actually now with McLaren. So yeah, but I think McLaren is probably going to take the constructors. Yeah, I hope so.
In between, there was a sprint race.
Yeah.
What's your view about sprints?
I've never loved the sprints. I think
I agree.
Yeah, I think they add on to. It's like they complicate the weekend, and especially when I'm a Mercedes fan, definitely mainly a Lewis Hamilton fan, then Mercedes, and so over time I've noticed that based on how when there's a sprint weekend, it's like when whatever you do at the sprint messes your entire weekend, or you actually makes your entire weekend really good. But I think it's because there's not even enough time to actually understand the track, everything that just comes to making sure that you have a good race. So I am not always a fan of the sprint. So yeah, so maybe it's just because they go like the most points are won on Sunday, and so. But yeah, I've never been a fan of the sprints, and I think do we have still one more sprint?
In Qatar.
In Qatar,
yes.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm not always for it.
I'm not a fan of sprints.
Yeah.
And this weekend, I think with the rain delays, we saw the real pain of the sprint, where When, as you mentioned, 5 cars got damaged in one session, and then the teams are not able to fix the cars, or not able to fix the cars properly.
Yeah.
Mercedes, Aston Martin.
Exactly. It feels like it's a sprint to fix the cars. That's exactly what was happening. Especially, I think it's after quali when Williams had 2 cars to fix.
Yeah.
And
only got one.
Only go one in. I mean, I think it's just, you can clearly tell. It feels like you're sprinting for everything. And the weekend still feels rushed, which I think is also not good for even the drivers themselves. It's like you get tired times 2 of what you actually, like in a normal race weekend would look like. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, this weekend also, back to you. How did you get interested in F1?
Wow. I don't know. I think based on the fact that by nature, everything of mine is fast paced. Everything moves at quickly. But then I actually love speed, and so I got interested in Formula One. With my older brother, especially the time of Schumacher, which especially when he moved to Mercedes, and so that for me was fascinating. Like this. Cars that keep going around in circles. They're so fast, and then we are, but then we are not, it's not the same way we do it on our roads. And so I think it was really fascinating. But then I think just based on the fact that I love speed, I mean, I drive a Subaru, which is, I've had probably 3 Subarus so far.
3?
Yes.
Okay.
And so for me, it's just, and I think, definitely as I get, and number one is always based on, is it the most, like right now I have a sports one, like limited edition one that really is a good car, like on the road and fast gets. So yeah, I love speed, and so I've always been fascinated. But also just I think generally sports, but not really sports that involve me doing a lot of activities, but only more of like watching. So I think. Also, I think the physics behind it. I love physics and mathematics, even when I was in school.
Okay.
And so getting into Formula One for me was more not just about speed, but just even understanding how we calculate different things. For instance, when a crash happens, by the time you're saying that's a 5G crash, what does that exactly mean? And so that really does fascinate me. Like even just seeing the speeds that the cars are driving at, and you're like, vis-a-vis the distance that they have to cover. So I tend to always even know like this track is the shortest track, means we're going to do the most laps, 72 laps. There's a track we will do, different race, like laps. So yeah, I'm fascinated with the physics and of it. And now more so, even outside of the cars themselves, but even in the garage. So I always say that if I didn't do what I do right now, and I came from a wealthy family that could help me get to where I need to go,
yes.
I'd probably be an engineer working at Petronas, and probably figuring fluid engineer, I think, because I feel like I'd enjoy being able to contribute to what happens on the circuit, not necessarily as a driver, but actually as, putting together the fluid oil, that's, things that are used in the car. And yeah, I'm now one of my things I want to do is actually go spend time at the garage. I need to find a VIP ticket that gets me into a garage soon. So,
and this is a perfect intro to what I should have started with, asking you, what does Linda do in the daytime?
Yeah.
Where did you take your love for sciences and maths?
Yeah.
How did that lead you into your career? And what does Linda do 9 to 5, Monday to Friday?
Yeah, Linda runs an amazing organization called AkiraChix, where we're building a pipeline of African female tech talent for the world. I'm a software engineer by profession. And so what I do is based on the fact that I believe there's opportunity for more young women to actually thrive and become part of the creators and builders of tech. And most importantly, because it's a field that's thriving, has lots of opportunities. It's not meant for specific people, it's meant for all of us. But I think based on where we come from, our backgrounds, our both economic and social, limit us to be able to explore our biggest potential. We have some really amazing and brilliant young women in schools that are doing really well, getting amazing grades, in math, sciences, but then they don't always head to the engineering side, and especially based on the fact that that's not something that's pushed even in our homes. And so um, for me, I believe supporting those who have an interest, but then they are economically challenged to be able to access education, tertiary education, and be able to thrive is what I do every day to try and make sure that we can create opportunities for them, find resources to make sure that they can get into this industry, though not in the traditional path of university, but in a very intense bootcamp path that helps them be able to get the skills that are required in the market, and they get to start their careers in some of the best startups in Kenya and in the African continent and everywhere in the world, and become the best versions of themselves and become some of the people who are building the solutions to some of the problems we face, especially in Africa and the world. Yeah.
F1, specifically the Mercedes team, they've had a few initiatives over the years, programs to get young women into the motorsports.
Yeah.
And on the engineering side, are you aware of any active ones right now? Do you hope to join or place one of your students?
Yeah, I'm always on the lookout, especially with everything that goes on at Mercedes. Their support for Hamilton's cause around how do we encourage STEM, Mission 44. I think I'm always on the lookout. There's a time I think they were looking for an advisory person, and so looked at it, and what they were looking for was actually young people, but unfortunately it was closed for the UK. But for me, those are the avenues I'd love to see some of our graduates and some of our students actually get into, because the more exposure they have outside of even our own setting means that we can start having role models even for all the younger generations that are coming up. So yes, always on the lookout for opportunities, even beyond Mercedes and everywhere else, anywhere we can unlock opportunities for young people. I will always knock. And it seems like I've rubbed on the love for Formula One to even some of our graduates. I've seen a bunch of my alumni who everybody's an F1 fan now. And I was like, that's good, because then it means that it's beyond just, we can see ourselves in those spaces where in a normal day we would never have seen ourselves. And yeah, I think I love math, as I said, I love science, which means that anyone who, it's why I will always be inclined to find things that are more technical, more, we can calculate things and find different, solutions to problems. And so I think for especially very brilliant young women who, and I speak to many of them, even as we're recruiting, you hear someone tells you, I love math. And so you're like, how do we unlock this love of math you have to even something bigger when it comes to career. And so being able to always create opportunities and find opportunities beyond our ecosystem, I think it's something that I am always working towards to make sure we can get more women in spaces that in a normal day we wouldn't think about. Even when we say engineering, it's just not about software, but actually can we get them even in, in the side of things like Formula One. So, yeah.
Was that what your Tech Allies event was last week?
Oh, yeah. So, yes, we had a Tech Allies event. And this is pretty much, we've been in the industry, been operating for 14 years now, with the most significant impact within the last 5 years, between 2019 and 2023, when we switched to a very bold model where we actually have a residential program for the young women. And so the impact that we've had has not just based on the work that we do around training, but also based on the relationships and the networks that we've built with companies that hire graduates from AkiraChix and constantly support them to grow and move from entry-level roles to mid and senior-level roles. And so the Tech Allies event was a moment for us to celebrate what we've achieved together with the Tech Allies, with our funding partners, around just the impact and look at what we can do in the next 5 years to actually even achieve or unlock more in terms of impact. But most importantly, with the tech companies, what can we do to ensure that we are building an inclusive and equitable tech ecosystem that is ready to assimilate this talent that we're building at AkiraChix, that we are preparing, knowing that we are preparing them to thrive in this industry, to ensure that they know they're included and they're needed. And so then the industry needs to always be ready for that as well. And so the event was about how do we move to the next level of ensuring that we are not paying for the same sins the Silicon Valley has paid for in terms of like diversity and inclusion. We're still a young ecosystem. How do we ensure we're building an ecosystem from the ground up that's diverse, equitable, and inclusive? And so it was really good to have the likes of MasterCard, Safaricom, Google, and Microsoft in the space, because they are the big players. And so we need the big players working with the startups who are the ones that currently, take on our graduates. We need the big players also doing their part so that we can build an ecosystem that pretty much is connected and can leverage on each other's strengths. So yeah, it was a really good time to be able to show our impact, and the report will be available on our website soon. Yeah.
Okay. It was a nice event we had, and I look forward to the report. If we had spoken last week, we would have talked about we're in the middle of a 3-race
triple
package,
header.
triple header.
Yeah.
And Mexico, which was just before.
Yeah.
Now, you are one of the few people I know who has been to Mexico, not once, not twice.
Yeah.
And how did you get to Mexico the first time? What took you there?
Yeah, so I mean, my work involves a lot of network building, especially fundraising for the organization, which means I'll find myself in the US, mainly New York, at any one given point, and mainly around the UNGA week, because that's when there's a lot going on, which then we always find it coincides with when just is very close to when the Mexican Grand Prix is. But now the first time I actually attended the Grand Prix was in 2018. And I had just had a fundraising trip in New York, but then there was a conference in Cancun in Mexico called Opportunity Collaboration, same around fundraising and network building. And so I remember this, by the time the conference was ending, that weekend was the race.
And just pause there.
Yeah.
Was that deliberate? Did the organizers, were they F1
No,
fans?
they don't even most of the times know about F1. So it was just organized. So I'm the one that was able to connect the dots. But wait a minute. So the conference ends and the weekend is the Grand Prix. It's like there's no way I can go back to Nairobi. Also, of how far it is, you're like, you know what? It's just the weekend. So I left Cancun after the conference, went to Mexico City, and booked out a space, and went to the Grand Prix. It was my first ever Grand Prix alone, actually.
That's very courageous.
I do courageous stuff. But and it's Mexico City. Mexico City is not a city that you just walk around alone, especially as a woman. It's not an easy city.
Okay, I don't mean to stereotype, because we're in a space where we learn that there are a lot of stereotypes about countries. Yeah. And I know from past coverage of Mexico, you know, you always see stuff about it's crime, there's traffic, which is not universal. But then you also see videos of drivers with armored cars and all that. Yeah. But you went from Cancun to Mexico City on your own.
I did. And so the most interesting bit about it is some of the stereotypes are actually true. Because when I landed at the airport, when you land, I mean, the Mexican Grand Prix is they call it the fiesta, because it's literally a party. It's like, I think the entire city just shuts down. The entire country just loves, Formula 1, and especially because of Checo. So it starts at the airport. You're welcomed with big images of almost every driver. So getting out, we're all pumped up and feels like everyone is coming in as well. I actually quickly learned that there are people who leave the US to come for the Mexican Grand Prix, especially Mexicans who are in the US, they come over for the Grand Prix. And so as I got out to take a taxi to my hotel, I get into a taxi, and then there's traffic as we're just joining the road. There's traffic ahead, and I'm sitting in the car and I watch a biker, all in black, riding and stop in front of a car, hit the side of the mirror.
Wow.
And it's not even, I think it's the driver's side, and grab something and I was like, oh my, where did I come? What is this I came to? And so, yeah, definitely that was like, okay. It looks like it's exactly what some people say. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to have a positive attitude. I'm here and I'm going to have a good time. I'm going to not think about everything else that I've had. And just, and that's what I did. Just ensured. So for the 3 days I went for the practice day, FP1 and FP2. I went for the quali, and I was, for all those 3 days, I was pretty much at the circuit. And so, it was a really good time. But interesting enough, I sat next to someone who was also alone, and he was a Mexican. He was a Ferrari fan, Mercedes fan. And so we started actually just like, because they were racing, started just having a conversation, and we actually became friends. And so in the 2019...
You went back?
Yes. So I went back in 2019. Again...
Conference or just
Exactly.
F1?
The conference still was happening at the same
something
time.
Is happening here.
Something is happening here. It's true. It is happening. So so I went back, but now because I'd made a friend, he actually reached out and was like, are you going to be around for the Mexican? And I was like, actually, I'm going to be around. So we organized. And so this next time round, I felt a little bit safer because I was, first of all, a Mexican. And so it didn't feel like I was alone. But also, I explored even more. I got to explore the city, went to a salsa, dance and things like that. It was really good. Human beings are really great. Enjoyed a lot, experienced their cuisine in a way that didn't feel like a hotel. It's more of exploring the city. And the most interesting bit about it is the race is very close to the airport. Like the track is very close to the airport. And so I stay at the airport. There's a hotel inside the airport.
Wow, okay.
And so I stay at the airport and just wake up and cross over to the track and come back. It's the safest way. Otherwise, everything else you will feel, and then the traffic as well, it can be quite something. So so the first time I was on the, I have time to remember that. Is it the Forosol? I think so. Yeah, where we have the big turn.
Is that the sitting pit? So the stadium thing.
Exactly, yeah. Because I think it's the Forosol is on that side. So where you actually see it's really beautiful. And then the second time I was on the straight, on the fast straight before they make their fast turn. It was really good. I've experienced the Mexican Grand Prix in a way that's just not the race. Also, 2018, I was lucky because that's when Hamilton gets to get his
fifth, I think.
Championship.
Okay,
exactly. And Mexico is not always a good track for Mercedes, and so that day he actually finished top 6, which was what we needed to do for him to be able to get the championship. And then in 2019, he actually won, which was very weird. And I was very happy because that's not usually a track that Mercedes actually have good history in terms of winning. It was really nice. And then there's always a party. I think that's why they call it the fiesta. It's just, there's DJ, there's with everything. And then it rains, people don't care, it's raining, we're all just having fun. It's really, really, really nice. I enjoyed my time. And I was like, so I've done 2 races in Mexico. Yeah.
That's very, that's a wow. And then when I talk to guests about F1, it's logistics is a big thing. Yeah. So ticket, visa, and air ticket, That's really far to get to Mexico from Nairobi.
It is. It's far. That's why you're like, if you're finding yourself in Mexico and there's a race, just stay for the race because it's already far. So for the visa, especially for if you have a US visa, UK visa, or a Japanese visa, you're good to go. So because your entry point will be any of those places. So I've not had to look for a Mexican visa because I always have a US visa or a UK visa, which means that I'll stop in New York and then down to Mexico. And so that's how it is. I think I've had people get feedback from people who've tried to get Mexican visas who are Kenyans. It's not easy. It's not easy. I don't have all the details, but the person who came to ask me because they know I'd gone to Mexico, they were saying how they're struggling with the embassy. And at that point, that's when I told them if they have a US visa, their best bet is to just stop in the US and then that's it.
And there's a Mexican embassy in Nairobi?
Yeah, apparently.
Wow.
There is. Yeah, it's very complicated. The amount of documentation is just absurd and some doesn't make sense. Yeah. So I think it's your best bet is to have the big stamps from and then definitely as long as you have that, it means that you have to stop over in either of those places, US or New York or UK, sorry. And so it's the same. It's a flight. Luckily, from the US to Mexico is not actually expensive because I think of just their proximity, like a flight ticket from there. You can just get JetBlue. I think it's the one that's the most easiest. And so it costs you about, I don't know now where we are at, but there's a time I actually paid $300 to and back. And so, but now when you add in terms of the cost from here to New York, depending on you flew a national airline, that will charge you about almost $1,800, $2,000. In total, I think you'll get to spend about $2,500 on just flights and then now hotels. So as I said, your best bet, especially if you're just going for the Grand Prix, just stay at the hotel at the airport. It's not cheap. It's not as cheap as going outside, but for your safety, but also on top of it, your commute, because of how Mexico City is, you want to just be able to walk and not necessarily have to take a taxi because it's really, really, especially during the weekend of the Grand Prix, the traffic is obnoxious. Yeah, completely. Yeah.
So for a first-time traveler to Mexico, somebody wants to go 2025 race, what did you tell them to do if they wanted to start today?
Yeah, well, start saving definitely for the money to be able to handle your logistics. I always tell people, Mexico is so far. Don't just go for the weekend for the Grand Prix. Add in something else. The Riviera Maya is a very long strait of just by the ocean, by the sea ocean. Is it ocean or the sea? One of those ones by the water. And so there's lots you can do. You can go to Cancun, to Tulum, to Playa del Carmen. So I think plan it also like a vacation or something so that at least it's worth your time because it's far. So you just add in like a whole 4 or 5 days, make it a whole week, and then you wrap it up with a Grand Prix and exit. So sometimes the coastal side, where there's the tourists, the Cancuns and the rest, the way you feel more, I feel like at home or safer because of it's very welcoming when it's come to touristy. The cities where it's chaotic, the Mexico City. So you can plan to stay and enjoy yourself in either the Riviera Maya, and then after that, maybe you just wrap it up with the Grand Prix. So that because it's chaotic, so you want to wrap it up with what's chaotic, and as you exit the city, but also it's Mexico. The queues at the airport are not usually easy. I think everyone is coming in at the same time, but it's a very easy process. You always just tell you, they'll give you a certain paper for entry. You cannot lose that paper. So because the minute you lose it, you're in trouble. It's not necessarily a stamp, because it's not a visa, but then it's the one thing they make money from. Because you lose it, there's a lot of money. And I think they've been making money for a while around it. So always make sure. And then they don't attach it on your passport. So it's loose. So you could lose it anytime. And so it's always advisable for you to make sure that it's really kept safe because that's what is going to get you out of the country. So prepare getting tickets tickets early. Once the season opens and the tickets go on sale, just get them early so that you get a good price. Otherwise, if you buy them late, you're going to be in trouble. And now I don't like the Mexican Grand. Now that I have a friend who is Mexican but lives in the UK, in the US, sometimes I reach out because he'll say I'll get them from the black market. It's easier sometimes to get them from the black market. So, yeah.
At sports events, that's a fear I have. I think there was a time when tickets were paper, and it was like it's a ticket you could buy from a scalper.
Yeah.
But now in this electronic age, do you see more of a concern where because you don't want to get to the gate and then your barcode is rejected?
Yeah. So I mean, like my tickets, I've got them from the F1 site directly. Everything is legit. It's emailed, things like that. They tell you. In fact, your best bet is to show up even on Thursday on media day to go pick your pass, so that like all that. At any one given point, I'll prefer getting my ticket from the F1 site. But now I think for people, when you have a veteran, then they know where they're gonna go find the tickets. But I think I'll always encourage you to get them from the F1 site. It's way much better. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. The urge is new. Next race you want to go to, Mexico 2025, or what race would you?
I want to go to Maranello, and probably, I think especially because Hamilton is moving to Ferrari, so I want to go to our home race.
So you're moving with Hamilton from, okay.
Yeah, Hamilton first, Ferrari, Mercedes next.
Okay.
So I'm a Hamilton fan, so I move where he moves. And so, I'd have loved to experience the British Grand Prix when he was at Mercedes. But I think it's one of those Grand Prix that's a little bit too chaotic, especially on the tickets. The tickets are so expensive sometimes, you're like, it's not worth it. And so my family lives in the UK, so even them, they haven't experienced going to Silverstone.
So did they go? Or
no, they didn't. They're
can't
just
go?
like, it doesn't make sense.
Okay.
And so for them, they're like, we need a race out of the UK. And so we are all we are all Hamilton fans. And so we're planning to go to mainly Monza, I think the Temple of Speed. We feel like we're going to go and celebrate Hamilton, his first race there. But also on my list is the Circuit of Americas. So I really, really, really was gonna attend the one for this year.
You tried for this year?
I was going to.
Okay.
Because I was in the US. But unfortunately, I had to come back 2 days before the race. Okay. Which meant that I actually missed the race. I've always loved the Circuit of the Americas. I think it's an interesting circuit. I'm not a fan of Miami and Vegas, so I think I'll stick to the old circuit. So that's one, but also I'd love to experience the Hungarian Grand Prix. Why? I've been to Hungary and I love the country. So I'd love to see an F1 race and how that goes. So it's one of the circuits that Hamilton has the highest record. And so, I'd love to experience that as well. And hopefully if they bring back Chalami
South Africa.
In South Africa, okay. I think there's hopes for 2027, I think. Then that would be a really good one to actually attend. Yeah.
Okay. You're our resident citizen of Mexico.
Yeah.
Checo mania is big. He's not having a very good season. What do you think will happen with him next year?
Oh no, we love
will
Checo.
It affect the his fan base, the love for F1 in Mexico?
Well, Checo is loved in Mexico. Like anything else, they don't even care whether he finishes last. It's just about Checo. It's Checo. Even when you're in the, the fan base, you will just clearly, you will forget you are cheering on Hamilton and just move to Checo. The love is real there. And I think, yes, definitely it will be affected if he has to actually leave, because if he leaves even next year, he won't have a seat. So he'll actually leave Formula One, which is really sad. I don't think he has things are looking good for him right now, and especially even just based on this last race in Brazil. I don't know. And it's Red Bull. They're ruthless. They will change things mid-season or whatever time they need to change. I feel for him because I think that Red Bull is already speaking to different people. I mean, we've seen Colapinto. I mean, he's a driver who everybody's wondering why doesn't he have a seat right now in F1. And so, he's could be a favorite as well. And the rumors that were there this weekend of Sainz is at his best. So, what if Red Bull went to speak to Williams and they had a switch where Colapinto gets a seat and Sainz takes the seat at Red Bull? So there's a lot, I think. Even for him, I know he knows in his head that things are not looking good. And I think Red Bull will have to make really tough decisions because they will lose the Constructors' Championship this year. And so I think, Helmut Marko is not going to be a very happy person. Yeah.
I think the last two races have been very unique in that Mexico, I think you had, on one day, you had 5 new drivers, really rookies, being given a chance to show their skills. Yeah. And then at the same time, after Brazil, I think you saw a couple of the veteran drivers just showing their fatigue. Yeah. Hamilton, Alonso, Checo, Hülkenberg. Yeah. But at the same time, I think in Brazil, in the wet, you saw the rookies really not quite ready, making more mistakes than if it was a straight open race. Yeah. And I think with the way there's so much activity in F1 now, the teams are not afraid to break contracts for anybody. Yeah. I think even Alonso, the body language and the radio messages, even Hamilton, I think people are wondering, will he finish the season?
Yeah. Well, everybody is wondering, will he do the next the remaining races, Qatar, Vegas, and Abu Dhabi? And so, even Alonso, I think I watched a clip of him coming off the car and I was like, wow, that must have been something. But the mixed match in the season so far, especially with the rookies and the oldies, it's really nice. I love it. I love. And I think I've had even Hamilton just keep pushing and saying, why are we not getting Colapinto a seat? And so everybody's like, because he's good. And so it's a good mix, I think. Yeah.
Do you think Mercedes is giving both drivers the same equipment or the same strategy, the same attention?
Well, definitely, I think for any team, you'll prioritize who is staying with you. You want to make sure George is your number one driver. So whether we have proof or not that they're doing setup issues with Hamilton's car, by default, they'll still want to prioritize George. He's going to be their number one driver, especially because they're bringing in a young one, Kimi. I still think there's something that Hamilton hasn't had a good relationship with his car. And so I think figuring out, and especially with his driving style and everything, I think it's been really hard to get in sync with his car. Also, the car itself, I think it's a diva as well. It's a change here and it just, things go haywire. I mean, you're in FP1, you're topping the charts, and then Q exiting quali and Q in Q1. It's just absurd. And so I think there's different issues as much as there's this rumors around his car is different from George. But then, I think at the end of it all, you can clearly tell even for him, it's like, he said he's looking forward to Christmas this weekend. So he's done, I think, even for him. It's like, so I'm happy to see Ferrari has been working on the 2025 cars. Like maybe we'll get the 8th at Ferrari. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. As we kind of wrap up the 2024 season, there are 3 races to go, and there's quite an intense challenge for the constructors and for the drivers. What's your prediction for the next 3 races, or even the end of the year?
Yeah, well, I think Max will get his championship. I think it's Lando needs to score 21 points in the next 3 races each race, and hope
for something happens to Max.
Exactly, like DNFs and all that. So I think Max is going to get his fourth championship. For the constructors, though, I think McLaren will take it. They'll probably pip Ferrari very little because Ferrari is also on the charge. And so I feel like, especially because this next race, this might actually favor the Ferraris more.
But is Las Vegas, then Qatar?
Yeah, I think it's Las Vegas might favor the Ferraris. Then after that, maybe McLaren. Yeah, but I think it's going to be a tight one between McLaren and Ferrari, but probably I would love if Ferrari actually wins the constructors, which is interesting because both teams haven't won in a very long time. And so it's really good to see that happen. I don't think Red Bull will. Max is going to be on his own league. Checo has a lot to do. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Linda. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Thank you.
Linda Kamau, you find her on Twitter at @Kamau, Instagram also.
Yeah.
Where else and the AkiraChix? Tell us about the AkiraChix platforms.
Yeah. You'll find me on Kamau on all social media platforms. And AkiraChix, same as at AkiraChix in everywhere, all social media platforms.
Okay. Thank you so much. It's been nice to chatting with you. I'm Lee Motorboy, the Motor Life F1 podcast. Look for it on all your platforms, social and audio platforms. We're here at the SemaBOX podcast incubator with our producer Sunshine today. And see you next week. Have a nice race. Have a nice rest of the 2024.